Viola, do you hear me? And if you say something, could you say something just very briefly? I want to see
Hi,
if I can.
Albrecht.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
okay, okay, it works.
yes, I can hear you. Can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Yes, I can hear you. I was
Okay,
wondering
wonderful.
because I didn't just see the picture, but don't hear anything.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I hope we're not speaking to the room now, but nobody seems to hear us. And I see
Yeah,
that Gabriela and David have arrived.
yeah, that's true. See them there. Yeah. All right, let's see what happens. Good.
Yes. So all's good in Manila. You're not too tired?
Yeah, tired. Yeah, only I got here maybe 1 in the morning, and then had to, was picked up again at 7. And by the time I got all settled, it was like 2 when I went to bed a little bit. But yeah, it's okay. I wake up now,
All right.
Mhm. All right, good. Let's see.
Yeah, let's see how this is going to work and where we
Yeah.
will appear.
No, ours worked today quite well. I mean, we had someone from Bangladesh, from Nepal, then from 2 colleagues, yeah, from Geneva, then one from Australia. And the only one who wasn't there was the Nepalese, but he got stuck in an accident and they stopped the traffic. He left the car, walked the rest of the way, and just barely made it before it was his turn. So, but it worked.
Oh, wow.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Then see you soon.
Yes, I hope
Yeah,
we will see one another somewhere.
yeah.
All right.
Good.
start when you see the loading, okay?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining our side event. We really appreciate your time and your interest in joining this meeting. This side event is been organized by African Smart Cities Innovation Foundation and Geneva Center for Governance Security. And we're starting now. When our speakers will be joining. We have two speakers that will be joining us via the visual. And today we shall be looking at having a conversation on building a climate resilient city, people-centered preparedness, crisis management, and urban security. Now, I would like to introduce our first panelist via the visual in person of Viola. Viola, please, could you on your camera? It is not on the screen. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. This is Ms. Viola's Csordas. She is a security reform advisor at the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance, DCAF, currently developing work streams on security sector governance aspects in disaster and crisis management, with passion approaches to climate and environmental security risk, worked on the African desk of the German Foreign Office Humanitarian Task Force at the World Bank in Rwanda on good governance. Thank you so much for joining us, Viola. Then I will be coming back to you for your presentation in the next few minutes. We go to the next panelist, Mr. Albrecht Schnabel. Mr. Schnabel, please, your video.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mr. Schnabel is head of the Asia Pacific Unit at DCAF, Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance. He is a research and advisory and capacity building activities focused on security sector governance and reform, particularly in the Asia Pacific region. Thank you so much, Mr. Schnabel. In the next few minutes, 1 or 2, I will get back to you for your presentation. Thank you. Back on the floor here, I have with me here Mrs. Gabriela Manea. She is a principal program manager at DCAF Policy and Research Department, division where she oversees several policy research projects on climate change and security sector, governance reform, and post-war security sector reform, as well as publication series. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Thank you. At the extreme end of my left-hand side, I have Mr. Mohammed as Gurindin Jaweed. He is a thought leader, a self-motivated researcher on smart cities, being in the project management team, building smart university and smart cities for the university in the Middle East. He brings with him more than 17 years of experience in developing smart physical infrastructure and smart cities. Having traveled and observed cities around the world, Mr. Mohammed has concluded and truthfully recognized that cities can be smart, sustainable, and climate resilient only when their civil physical infrastructure is matured enough to benefit from the current and future information and communication technologies. With a section for contributing towards societal good and humanity, Mr. Mohammed's groundbreaking work excels in developing first of its kind worldwide an innovation multidisciplinary engineering master's curriculum for smart cities development and authoring 5 books for supporting the curriculum. Grooming future generation, it involves his son, Yusuf, and is thankful for his contribution, time, and efforts. The larger goal is to have physical infrastructure for cities that is resilient to today's natural hazard and withstand the future challenging climate. Currently, he serves as founder and director of Care Consulting Services Private Limited in India and company in Saudi Arabia, where he is dedicated to helping young professionals growing their multidisciplinary technical know-how. Thank you for joining. Thank you, sir, for joining. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As I've earlier mentioned, our purpose of having this side event today is how to make our cities to be more resilient against any form of pandemic, any form of disasters, not just only even the infrastructures alone, not just only the human beings alone, but even inclusive of the planet itself, because all these are encompassed of what made up who we are, the planet, the infrastructure, and humans. Our cities around the world face the growing impact of climate change, building resilience through effective crisis management, urban security, and people-centered preparedness is more critical than ever. Our event will focus on innovative solutions, policy frameworks, and strategies that prioritize vulnerable communities while enhancing the resilience of urban infrastructure. During this section, we expected that our listeners, our stakeholders, and our panelists, ranging from the policymakers, security experts, and urban planners to community leaders and activists will come together to discuss and share best practices to ensuring urban centers are better equipped to handle the challenges posed by climate change, but with a strong focus on human-centered approaches. We believe your participation in this event will invaluably, as we work together, shape sustainable, secure, and resilient cities in the face of climate change. The goal of our side event today is people-centered climate resilient priority, vulnerable population in urban planning, disaster preparedness, and urban security provision. Crisis management frameworks, lesson learned from cities that have faced environmental, climate, and social crises for urban planners, policymakers, and urban security sectors. Urban safety and security building and governing cities that are not only resilient, but also safe and equitable for all inhabitants, while also ensuring climate, gender, and people-centered security provision. At this point, I will like to open the floor to our first speaker, our panelist, Mrs. Viola, to make her presentation. Yes, good. Viola, with your wide experience in the security sector, both within the Africa, Ethiopia, and part of the European parts, and I would like to want you to look at it from this angle. What are some of the impact of climate and environmental risk people-centered security have faced from your experience?
Thank you very much, David, and good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, let me start with a big thanks also to our partners from the African Smart Cities Innovation Foundation to partner with us for this event and to be open to this approach of bringing together two topics which seem at first glance quite unrelated. And as David had introduced, really looking at the urban space from different things such as the physical infrastructure, but then also the invisible things such as governance and social cohesion, etc. And let me start with talking a little bit about the specificities of the different environmental and climate risks in the urban environment from a people-centered security perspective, and then also highlight some initial thoughts about the possible contributions and roles, but also challenges faced by security sector actors. So I think the first important thing to note is that urban environments from a people-centered perspective are especially vulnerable to climate and environmental risks because you have large concentrations of people as well as usually quite high proportions of the urban poor and marginalized communities. That can be people who are traditionally marginalized, but then also migrants and refugees, including climate migrants who are going to urban centers because their agricultural livelihoods, for example, are at risk where they come from. And we've seen this in a couple of contexts, such in Sierra Leone and Freetown, but also in Iraq, where people are really flooding towards the urban areas. And then this also leads to an unequal exposure to those climate and environmental risks. I mean, there are the heat islands where there is less greenery and the temperatures are much higher in certain areas of cities, but also, of course, access to sanitation and electricity is not equal, and living in risk-prone areas or the quality of housing and informal settlements. And for example, in the town of Freetown in Sierra Leone, we've really seen how the most marginalized communities lived between the sea, so were at risk from flooding from the sea, but also where all the water from the mountains was coming down. So they had the flood risks from two sides and also the risk of landslides. And this also leads then to a higher vulnerability of these communities and a lack of coping capacities. In the case of a disaster, there is this unequal access to services, either because some of those areas are underserviced, but then also sometimes because the emergency services cannot physically access with their vehicles these informal settlements. And of course, also there are certain barriers related to socioeconomic factors such as language and financial resources, social networks for newly arrived migrants, etc. Another important aspect to keep in mind in the urban environment is the underexplored nature of slow onset disasters related to climate change and environmental degradation, such as heat and drought, as well as also pollution. And air pollution and heat are the silent killers in many urban environments, and also the ones that are most detrimental to creating violent unrest and conflict. So it's less some immediate rapid onset disasters or like a fire that lead to these tensions and conflicts, but much more those things like the drought and lack of access to water or access to clean water, etc. In this process where municipalities are emerging as really important actors to manage these climate and environmental risks, we also see that really the governance of this multi-stakeholder process is a key ingredient to making things happen. And this also includes the security sector, which so far is sometimes seen a bit as on the side of these disaster and climate resilience discussions. And there are a couple of areas where security sector actors such as civil protection, but also police and the military, of course, are among the de facto first responders to many disasters. The armed forces in many cases have the most heavy equipment and the civil engineering capabilities. And in some contexts, there is also a complete absence because of resources of any dedicated civil protection agency. In Sierra Leone, for example, the armed forces are the disaster responders. In addition to those roles, there's also a big potential for social cohesion, strengthening the social fabric, demonstrating state presence and increasing state legitimacy in these types of roles that the security sector can play. So people really care and they really remember in case of an emergency who were the ones who were coming to help them, to rescue them, etc. And it also really makes them feel seen and cared for by the security sector, but also the government. Of course, in some instances, there are also some tensions around these roles, as security sector actors can be the ones who have to enforce certain zoning restrictions, for example. And we heard about some instances where people were settling in flood-prone areas and then their buildings had to be bulldozed down. But we also saw some positive examples. So, for example, in the Philippines, we heard about an armed force unit who worked with the community to first sensitize them about the level of risk in the area where they were residing, but then also helping them to transition, physically moving, but also identifying an alternative area where there were also economic opportunities, schools, etc., for such a resettlement. But important to do it in a people-centered way and not just to enforce something. One of the challenges that we also see is that security sector actors frequently are remaining more at the technical level. They're very operational, and this makes them focus more on the response or the relief if a disaster is already happening, but it disconnects them from the strategic discussions around climate change adaptation and makes them underrepresented in these preparedness and planning efforts. So this technical level doesn't allow security sector actors to, on the one hand, plan for the longer term effects of climate change and the slow onset disasters such as heat, drought, and pollution that I just mentioned. But it also takes them a little bit out of an integrated approach to risk management. And we just had an event in Moldova where we talked a lot about the relationship between good governance, crisis management, and countering hybrid threats, and also seeing those risks in an integrated way and being aware of vulnerabilities not only to natural disasters, but also how they can be exploited by terrorist organization or other enemies can be a real benefit to security sector actors and is something that we don't see very often so far. There is also sometimes a role where security sector actors are working on enforcing rules and regulations around environmental protection. So nature-based solution and intact ecosystems as really a solid protection against some of the worst effects of climate and environmental risks. However, these are also areas where frequently there are some linkages between organized crime. I mean, areas such as waste management and industrial, medical, but also household waste, electronic waste, and industrial pollution in general can be quite prone to that. And this is an important role that also needs to be taken into account if you're thinking about a comprehensively resilient city. So let me close by saying that the urban environments are really vulnerable to climate and environmental risks, and a people-centered engagement by the security sector actors is a crucial element in the governance of these urban risk environments and to strengthen multidimensional urban resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Viola. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for this wonderful presentation. And clearly, from your presentation, we can really understood how the climate change have actually affected so many communities, and through landslide, mountains, and even the economic impacts. But in 2 minutes, Viola, in 2 minutes, I will want you to kindly respond to this question to me, that what role do you think the security sector could make to make our city more resilient? Just in 1 or 2 minutes. Viola?
Yes, I think in the second part of my presentation, I already talked a little bit about that, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but just to summarize again, in terms of the disaster risk reduction, there is a big role for the security sector to play, but then also in the enforcement of environmental rules and regulations and legislations. And the important message is to do all of that from a people-centered and informed by people's needs approach.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, our next speaker will be Mr. Albrecht. Mr. Albrecht Schnabel. Pardon. Yes. Thank you for connecting. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. From your bio, we can see how you have put in so much experience and so much time in your work within the Asia Pacific. And I want you to look within the content of your region, where you are putting so much energy and experience. How can you please tell us why the urban context requires a unique security sector? Do you get my question?
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
Okay. Okay.
Welcome to everyone. It's great to be part of this panel. And thanks for giving us this opportunity. Now, at DCAF, we were quite curious about the need to look at the urban context and to develop a unique perspective on urban security sectors, which are aligned with specific urban security threats. The assumption is, yes, there are specific urban security threats. So we carried out a large sample mapping study of cities and their security sectors. And this is what we found. We found that urban communities definitely experience unique urban threats, and they have unique environments for response measures. And therefore, they should require unique structures and processes for their security sectors and the institutions that provide security for them as a public service. There are a number of specific common challenges to urban safety that we identified that depend on adequate and tailored responses from the security sector. I'm not saying anything new here. They include violent crime, armed political conflict in some cases, quite often organized crime, terrorism, also segregation, gentrification, weak public service provision, of which security as a public service provision is one of many. Also, we observed increasing privatization of security, and importantly, environmental and climate change related crimes and threats. However, pollution, trafficking crimes, corruption, or dumping and discharge crimes, or illegal logging or mines, all those are big business. There's a lot of money that is to be made. While polluted land and water then have big health consequences, as we know, unfortunately, we also see that there's often very little scrutiny, as it is not a very popular enforcement topic, because it negatively affects big business. We also observed a lot of interconnections, intersectionality between all those threats. We also found that most national or federal governments do not have a specific urban security policy vision. They have one for the nation, but not necessarily in an urban context, which means that security sector governance and especially security sector reforms that help us living up to the security provision as a public service and in line with good governance principles are not applied with an urban focus. And so one should therefore speak of and also plan for an urban, unique urban dimension of security sector governance and reform, increasingly also when it comes to preparing for and responding to climate change. And in our Asia-Pacific unit, we focus on that region, the Asia-Pacific region. There are many innovative responses to environmental and especially climate change-related threats in many of the highly affected cities around or across the region. And for this purpose, please allow me to focus on a few interesting mitigation efforts from Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia, of course, is a region that is heavily affected by climate change, where urban safety, where climate resilience, where responses by the security sector converge quite a bit. So a few examples. For example, the Jakarta government in Indonesia is implementing projects to improve urban drainage systems, to prevent flooding, to stabilize the coast, to counteract sea level rise. And an example here is the Giant Seawall Jakarta project. It protects low-lying areas and promotes sustainable urban water management. And Jakarta has also implemented a smart flood monitoring system that uses artificial intelligence-driven data analytics. And this system provides real-time flood data across the city and is integrated with an early warning system that is accessible with mobile apps and allows residents in Jakarta to prepare and also evacuate if that becomes necessary. And this initiative has led to reforms in how Jakarta's security and disaster response agencies work. So the emphasis here is on coordination with climate resilience agencies and also training for climate-related risk scenarios. So the national security sector also collaborates with environmental agencies to oversee and to enforce these infrastructure developments. And also the Indonesian army has a critical role in addressing environmental challenges through what it's called its Manunggal Air program. That's the name of it. And it's an initiative that was launched a couple of years ago and has established over 2,700 clean water points across the country of Indonesia by mid-December 2024. And it's interesting that this especially benefits rural and underserved areas and therefore serves as a balance a bit between the heavy focus on big cities, but also the need of assistance in rural areas. Another example is Metro Manila, and that's why I'm right now. I'm at a workshop here in Manila in the Philippines, which developed a resilience roadmap and investment plan that includes flood control, emergency response, and improved housing in vulnerable urban areas. Part of this initiative also includes institutional reform within the police and local authorities to manage resources and responses during climate-induced disasters. And there are many of them. This month alone, there have been 2 typhoons of a large scale that have hit the country. So here, training programs have been established for first responders. Or Bangkok. Bangkok has implemented green zones that act as flood buffers, like at Chulalongkorn University's Centenary Park. So this park is designed to absorb water and reduce flood risk, but also improve urban heat conditions and air quality, especially during the summer. And so these initiatives lead to cooperation among Bangkok's emergency services, environmental agencies, and the police. And the police plays roles in patrolling and maintaining these areas, especially when there's very heavy rain. Bangkok and other Thai cities have also been developing urban cooling strategies. They include tree planting and also reflective road coatings to keep the streets cooler. Security forces there collaborate with local governments in these urban cooling projects. And the Thai military and police have also been involved in emergency training to address the impact of extreme heat events. Or Vietnam, where the 100 Resilient Cities Initiative, how it is called, develops resilience against typhoons and sea level rise, and that includes seawalls and flood control. And here, police forces and urban planners work together to integrate climate considerations into urban safety. Or Malaysia's government is investing in stormwater management projects like the so-called Smart Tunnel in Kuala Lumpur. And this tunnel diverts floodwaters when needed, and at the same time helps with urban transportation needs when there are no floods. So disaster response protocols now involve local law enforcement in emergency management. And here the idea is to have a coordinated response framework that is in place during extreme weather events. And finally, as an example, we have Singapore, which is pioneering urban safety with its Singapore Green Plan 2030. That's what it's called. And it addresses flood prevention, heat risk management, and ecosystem conservation in urban areas. That includes climate resilient infrastructure, such as green roofs or vertical greenery or smart cooling technologies. And Singapore's civil defense and police collaborate on these initiatives with climate-aware training in urban planning and emergency preparedness, and also measures to guard against heat waves and flooding. And in addition, and that's another way that security institutions can contribute to reducing climate change and the negative impacts of climate change, the Singapore Armed Forces plans to reduce its carbon emissions by two-thirds by 2030, and by 50% again by 2050. And how do they do this, or how do they want to do this? By installing solar panels across their military bases by 2025, by transitioning to an all-electric administrative vehicle fleet by 2030, and also by adopting green aviation fuel. So there's a lot that the security institutions themselves can do to reduce their emissions. So what is important, also the Singapore Armed Forces will establish a sustainability office to oversee and guide these efforts. So to generate internal monitoring and accountability. So these initiatives reflect a real strong commitment across Southeast Asia to link urban safety, climate resilience, and adaptations of the security sector's contributions. And those safety initiatives increasingly address climate risks by reshaping, by adapting urban governance, public security provision, and by strengthening also community resilience. So now we need to monitor how effective and sustainable they are, and what can be learned, what's feasible to adopt for similar initiatives across the globe. Thanks a lot, and back to you, David.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think back here we have learned so much. And one key lesson from your presentation is that clearly the climate change has no border, and there's no continent or there's no any region that is left out in the impact on the climate change. I quite impressed with what the Bangkok are actually doing, which is the Thailand in the implementation of the green zones, as we mentioned. We know that is a very fantastic project. We're also impressed with what the Jakarta are also doing, which is Indonesia, in investing more on alarm system for disaster risk reduction. This is very, very important. And how I wish other nations of the world could also learn and invest more in this kind of a project. because it is our belief that if all these alarm systems were being put in place, not just only in cities, but even at the community level, it will definitely reduce the risk of the climate change and even other disasters. So we're really happy with what the Jakarta, the Indonesian government were doing. That is very good. And also we are very impressed with what that region is also doing in investing in the ecosystem. This is very good because we know that not just mitigating the impact of the climate change alone, and of course this also make the cities more lively and more healthy for the citizens as well. Yes, and thank you so much for also mentioning what the security agencies were also doing, particularly DCAF, doing in that region, particularly in installation of solar panels and solar and other gadgets, in managing the security aspects in that region. We really appreciate your presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So back to the table here. The next speaker is oh, okay. Your site is even more stronger than mine. We have Gabriela. She's from DCAF, representative of DCAF, and committed staff of DCAF. You've been participating in so much events and also been a very active program manager or head of program in DCAF. I will really want to throw these questions at you. That why do you think climate change and urban safety and security interact? Thank you.
Hello. I hope you can hear me quite well. Thank you, David. Thank you to the other panelists. So I'm the last one from DCAF speaking today, and I would like to also emphasize the fact that DCAF has a commitment to bring up to the policy agenda the issue of climate change and its impact on communities and on human security. And so also in my work, as well as my colleagues that have previously spoke, I have tried to develop research and frameworks, policy frameworks that try to mainstream climate change into the work that DCAF does, namely the good governance and reform processes of the security sector. So DCAF, just a little bit of information about DCAF. DCAF is not managing itself security issues. DCAF is managing those who are managing security issues. Better said, the DCAF tries to advise them and to work together with them so that they develop better governance structures, better institutions, better rules, and that they are in a place of providing security while respecting human rights, gender equality, and promoting a participative and inclusive approach. So the first point I would speak about, as David already alluded, is saying a few words about the impacts of climate change on cities, and to briefly explain how DCAF sees its approach to urban safety and security. So we all know by now that climate change has disruptive impacts on human security, mainly due to the way in which climate conditions erode our physical environments. Environmental and climate-related hazards negatively impact the health of urban populations and lead to the destruction of critical infrastructure, sometimes also security-related infrastructure, making the work of the security sector actors impossible or difficult. They lead to loss of property and sometimes to very intense humanitarian crises, which again require the involvement of security actors as first responders, as my colleague Viola has just explained in the beginning of this panel. However, beyond such immediate impacts, we also know that climate change has led to an increase in population displacement and migration towards the cities, also due to loss of agricultural land and loss of livelihoods in rural areas in many parts of the world. And this has forced people to move into cities. But we also know that independently from the climate change impact, just linked to global economic development trends, more than half of the world's population live in urban settlements. And this trend towards rapid urbanization will only continue, especially in low and middle income countries. So in that context, in the absence of adequate planning and resources and enough economic resources, which are often combined with a weakness in governance or a lack of political will, all of these can result in insufficient and improvised public urban infrastructure and in the emergence of informal urban spaces which are very much affected by poverty, by marginalization, by insecurity, especially for people in vulnerable situations like many women, elderly, youth, migrants and displaced people, as well as refugees. So, unfortunately, such conditions do often couple with poor economic opportunities and sometimes with ongoing or unresolved conflicts and violence, which create the fertile ground for enhanced criminal trends, ranging from simple property crimes to gang violence, to homicide, to unsafe mobility in the cities, but also from a gender perspective, harassment and sexual and domestic violence, or use of drugs and small arms, trafficking of small arms. In extreme cases, these can also lead to various forms of radicalization, political or religious, as well as recruitment into terrorist networks, and sometimes, unfortunately, to even urban warfare, where the cities become the field of war. As DCAF is concerned, so DCAF is very much concerned with good governance and with human security and a people-centered approach, as my colleagues also have mentioned. So when we think about urban safety and security, we take a very holistic and people-centered approach and think about policies that address these issues in their complexity and try to provide solutions for city populations. And their vulnerabilities. DCAF also refers, when it refers to urban safety and security, does not think only about the simple prevention of crime and violence, but we go one step further and think about the enhancement of individual rights, including people's physical, social, and psychological integrity. So it's not security for the sake of security, it's security for the sake of people. In the next part of my presentation, I would like to speak about what the security sector should do to be better prepared to provide urban safety and security in the context of climate crisis in positive ways. And before that, I would like to mention that for us at DCAF, security sector does not only mean security providers, namely police, military intelligence, border guards, of the guys with the guns, basically, but we also think about the security management institutions like ministries, municipalities, in the case of cities, municipal executives, in the case of cities, governance, but also security oversight institutions like parliaments or local legislative bodies. Because for us, security provision is not enough. Security sector must be under proper civilian and, if possible, democratic oversight. However, we at DCAF also thought that it's the time to think of a very comprehensive framework about climate action within the security sector, and we developed this framework that we called MARC, which comes from it's an acronym coming for four notions, namely mitigation, adaptation, response, and cooperation. And we think that the security sector has a role to play in all of these categories. So in terms of mitigation, security sector actors in the cities need to mitigate their own climate and environmental footprint in the cities they operate, in their environment. And they also need to prevent and mitigate the climate impact of others living in that cities through law enforcement activities. For instance, and this is something that already happens in many countries of the world. One example from the police in Dubai, for instance, which has committed to become a carbon neutral police in a very measurable period of time and reporting on the progress. So it has decided to transform its police fleet into hybrid vehicles so that it has less greenhouse gas emissions, practicing what they call green procurement. It has installed solar panels on the rooftop of police station buildings, creating their own energy supply from green sources, and in that way diminishing the pollution and the greenhouse gas emissions. And they have also taken a very proactive raising awareness about climate change, security impacts in their community of practice. So they can also further, especially the military, but also the police, can reduce emissions from their training activities by rethinking the way they do that. And they can also play an active role in the restoration and maintenance of natural habitats within and around the cities, like forests, parks, water, resources, and biodiversity. At the same time, mitigation goes hand in hand with adaptation. So security sector actors like police, but also the military also needs to adapt itself to changing climate conditions. So hotter climate would also puts a lot of strain on police officers, for instance, so they need a better way of clothing, they need regular breaks, they need health prevention so that they can operate also in hot environments without their health being damaged. They also need sometimes to protect the security infrastructure from flooding and other negative weather impacts, so that when there is a need for their intervention, that they are capable to intervene because their vehicles and their infrastructure is still operating and working. And in terms of municipal, executive, and legislatives, they can contribute to this process by enacting policies and budgets for the security sector at the local level in order to support such adaptation and mitigation efforts. But at the same time, I also think, and they can also monitor and make sure that they are accountable in the work they do in the cities. And then we come to the area of response, which is a very big area. And as my colleagues have shown, there are many ways in which security sector actors can intervene on their daily activities to solve the populations affected by climate change. And here they have to be preventive and also sometimes reactive in their response. And what I will mention more today, it's more the aspect, the role they can have in fighting criminality and other forms of violence and urban warfare, while respecting human rights of citizens, and while taking the gender, climate, and conflict-sensitive approach. And they can, as I said, play an important role in preventing and combating environmental crimes. And we have examples, for instance, from France of such active roles of the police, where after the intense drought of the summer of 2022, a police of the environment unit was created to enforce local orders, prefectural orders restricting water consumption in some departments. And they were enabled to issue fines, for instance, for breaches in water consumption. And in some cases, they also make use of sophisticated tools like GPS mapping of river systems, where we can observe the connection to to the use of innovative smart technologies and their usefulness for the work of the security sector. Another example comes from Israel, where the Ministry of Environmental Protection has an enforcement and preventive unit called Green Police, which has the mandate to investigate environmental crimes, which can ban the use of vehicles whose emissions exceed allowed standards, and can hand down administrative orders to remove waste, for instance. They can also provide security support in informal settlements or poor neighborhoods in collaboration with municipal authorities and the communities involved living in those areas, thereby helping to fight the root causes of urban gangs and urban warfare. And we have some examples, good examples, for instance, from South Africa in cities like Mamelodi and other towns in the Northern Cape, that which have pioneered an innovative approach that combines crime mapping with community engagement. This initiative organizes citizens and specially trained police facilitators to discuss crime spatially. Residents create individual maps making crime locations, which are then consolidated into a community-wide map reflecting shared experiences. In this collaborative process, they end up in discussions in collective solutions that integrate community stakeholders, design strategies, and police responses, which fosters a cooperative approach to local safety challenges. Another example from India, Mumbai, it also shows the gender dimension, how gender dimension can be involved in such cooperative approaches, participative approaches, where a strategy called Panchayata, involving Panchayata, is used, where a group of 10 local residents from poor neighborhoods actively collaborate with police in developing law enforcement strategies in their neighborhoods. Most of these members are women, and they have a great moral authority in the community to control violence or exercise this moral authority that they have to control violence and crime. Another example is to prevent crime through environmental design, which involves a collaboration between law enforcement actors from the security sector, urban planners, and community members. So it shows the interdisciplinary character of providing urban safety and security in cities. Finally, going to the final pathway of how climate action can be integrated into security sector governance and reform through cooperation, we think it is fundamental for the security sector actors to develop inclusive mechanisms of coordination and collaboration, A, with the communities and groups of citizens they are meant to serve, B, with all city authorities involved in managing complex and interconnected climate-related safety and security needs, and finally with authorities at national and regional levels whenever this cooperation is required. So as a final conclusion, if I still have 1 minute, I would say that security sectors have meaningful contribution to make for making cities more climate resilient, safer, and people-centered, provided that some ideas are taken into account, like consultation of communities, broad and equal representation of the city population in the urban security sector, provided that public accountability is there, that regulatory competencies of city governments are used to develop climate-related safety and security regulations in cities, that there is equal access to basic services at the city level, and that there is a vertical and horizontal integration of service provision in cities that ensure close collaboration among all sectors of urban administration with clearly defined roles between national, regional, and the urban levels. I will stop here and we would now.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. Thank you for the presentation. I think I also thank you for reminding us of how climate change actually has affected the infrastructure So much, especially in maybe from my experience in Africa. So many houses collapsing, so many landslide. So, it's so alarming, and not to even talk about the means of livelihood of farmers, a whole bunch of hectares of land being washed away with farm products. So thank you so much for reminding us of the impact of climate change on infrastructures and also on citizens. And also, I have two key words from your presentation: political will. Political will. Yes, as I've always said, mitigating or fighting the impact of climate change, it is not all about the government alone, and it is not all about the citizens alone. It's a collective effort. But the government holds the largest responsibility to demonstrate leadership and to actually, to exercise that political will, putting policies that are human friendly, putting policies that can sustain the fighting against the impact of the climate change. Which these are the things we expect from our political leaders, not even the political leaders, even religious leaders, communities leaders. It is very much important to take responsibility. And also, one other keyword that I got from you is holistic and people-centered approach. Yes, this clearly tells the sincerity, knowing clearly what to do and doing it at the right time. Don't politicize whatever you want to do for the community, because these are just a common sense back in Africa. When it comes to during election time like this, the politicians, when they win the election, they give priority to those regions or those zones that actually voted for them, and neglecting those other zones that did not really voted for them. And when you're demonstrating leadership, you don't think about that. You don't think about who voted for you and who did not voted for you. You are a leader for all. So I really thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you so much. And also lastly, you talk about a collaboration between the communities and cities. This is also very important because yes, we are talking about smart cities and come on, who made up the smart cities? The same humans that are in the community and are in the cities. The same impact that is affecting those in communities affecting the cities as well. So there is this important need to bridge the gap between the cities and the communities. The infrastructural development of facilities in the cities should be extended to the communities as well. By so doing, this would definitely give full sense of belonging to all citizens. And by so doing indirectly, it will even reduce the pressure in the city. People migrating from the community to the city, the pressure will definitely reduce. Thank you so much, Gabriela, so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. We really appreciate you. So, lastly, on our presentation today, of course, it's not lastly because we're expecting from our audience, of course, to also make some contribution, either by questioning or making that input as well. So this is not the last presentation. So we have Mr. Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed, you have so much passion about smart cities in India, in Saudi, Middle East generally,
Right.
and you have a whole lot of projects that you have been handling for almost 17 years.
Yes.
You have presented, you have published 5 different books.
Exactly.
All related to smart cities.
Right.
I won't be surprised with your response today or with your presentation today because so much is expected of you. So, Mr. Mohammed, based on your experience, how can we make cities of the world less vulnerable to climate crisis, and what are long-time and short-time risks of climate change, and how smart cities can help mitigate them?
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to thank COP29, ASCIF, and DCAF for having me here on the plenary discussion. And I'm also welcoming everybody, whoever listening to it. So it's a complicated question that you said, that you asked for. But let me start it with saying this, that peace and prosperity go in hand. If you do not have peace, then you just cannot think of prosperity. And if you think of prosperity, then it is required that you need to have peace all along, right? Without peace, There is no prosperity without prosperity, and you cannot imagine of peace. So peace, in the sense, like I would say, it is really difficult to gauge it. The reason being, there are two components to it: safety and security. Safety from the things that you know what it is, and security is from things that you don't know, right? You don't know, so you need to get secured for that. So in the context of DCAF and ASCIF being combined here together, so there are so many other kinds of securities, like food security, health security, climate, what do you call, criminal activities, security from criminal activities, and environmental security. So what smart cities address is the environmental security. People doesn't get displaced, people doesn't get thrown away from the society or lose their property or life or whatever. So we'll be discussing something on this today, because smart city addresses this kind of security. So first we need to understand that sustainability, it's a very broad term, and resilience is a subset of sustainability. When you do not have resilience, there is no point talking about sustainability, in the sense that if I cannot stand myself, or if I cannot do something for myself as it is, as of now, or I just cannot come out of a situation quickly, then sustaining is a different issue. We just cannot talk about that. So sustainability is a long-term kind of thing, and resilience is a short-term kind of thing. The climate risk also poses these two things. Like, long-term is, our generations, maybe you can see that, okay, uh, our generations may or may not come up, live up to that point where you have got 2 degrees kind of thing. So we'll see that on in the coming discussion. Like, say, when we say smart cities definition, what Smart City Council give it as a definition is something: a smart city is one that uses technology and data to enhance its livability, workability, and sustainability. Where IBM gives it as a smart city is an urban area where technology and data, they come together. I mean, the collection of it help improve quality of life as well as the sustainability and efficiency of city operation. So we are talking about this. So can you just go to the next slide? Yeah. So climate gives you two kinds of risk, right? It's a long-term risk wherein future generations and humanity is in danger. That could be one. The second is melting ice caps. Okay, that goes into rising sea levels, and another thing is biological imbalance, right? That kind of imbalance and human health definitely will affect. These are the long time risk, or what you call long term risk. Where we talk about the short term risk, like, okay, as it is obvious and talked about that if we are zero carbon or carbon neutral today, the climate, the effect of the climate would be seen in maybe 90, 100, 150 years. But in those 150 years, every year, the extreme weather, is pounding on the planet. So we are suffering from that. So that kind of risk are the short-term risk, wherein you have got hurricanes, cyclones, and flooding, and at times, at places, you have got severe droughts, and forest fires have become common now in those cold countries as well. Now there is something called city. Those cities are suffering from flooding, right? Over downpour, excessive downpour, and flooding. So, what smart cities, because as such we are talking and we are for the cities, we can avoid that kind of thing. That is the uh, flooding of the cities. So, when we talk in terms of smart cities, I just want to tell you that, from times immemorial, you can say thousands of years, civil infrastructure has been, that is the only thing that is there, and it is all engineering a marvel. So smart cities of today are engineering marvels. I just cannot say that, okay, it is technological or whatever. It is all combined together. They're all an engineering marvel. So smart cities offer integrated transport system that you can see every day, always, right? And you have got other theme that, okay, it accommodates, it tries to accommodate, I would say, it tries to accommodate all section of the society, the population. They are safe, secure, and livable urban areas. I mean, it is everything is nice to say and hear about, and offer city-wide surveillance. And no doubt, they are all the economic powerhouses. I mean, these all are the visible. Now, what all the things that we do not see is smart cities are practically and primarily are buried their smartness underground. Unless you have got that smartness underground, the city on the surface cannot be smart. So that we just cannot see, right? This one. And there are less obstructed surface area. We need to keep the surface as much as possible. There is less obstructed. We do not have that kind of obstruction like poles and this and advertisements, and that kind of stoppages should not be there. Then it should be a blend, or it is a blend of physical and digital infrastructure, what I call phygital infrastructure. There is physical and digital, there is physical infrastructure, and smart and resilient. So these are the qualities, these are the features of a smart city, right? So what we have in here is okay, all these are good to say, good to hear, right? Now, but how cities help, smart cities help the climate part of it. I mean, how do the cities mitigate the climate risk, extreme climates? So here, we'll say that all smart cities or the smart cities are ICT enabled. I mean, in the sense that it is not all ICT. The physical infrastructure is ICT enabled, right? We have got ICT enabled infrastructure. Then you have got service automation and efficiency, right? Services, all the services the city is running, they are efficient. They'll become efficient with the use of ICT, and it is automated most of the time, right? Then we have got pollution monitoring and control mechanism. Very fine, where if everything is good to go with, fine. Then we have got weather monitoring and early warning system. Smart cities offer that kind of facility as well, right? Early warning. And smart cities do intend to promote and use renewable energy sources. That's a good thing again. Then we have got modeling and digital twins for the city that is now available for most of the services they offer. Then we have got, it also provides in terms of crisis management. So these are the things that, can help mitigate the climate crisis. Now let me go back to the point that when I talked about physical and digital infrastructure. Now, all these things, everything that you have seen is all, I mean, everything that I spoke about, ICT enabled, services automation, pollution monitoring, and say whatever, weather monitoring and early warning system, all these things are ICT enabled. There is all information and technology. These are all the soft services. Now, but do not forget that there is a component called physical thing attached to it. A physical thing attached to it. What if you get early warning system? You can just cannot do anything with the early warning system. It warns you, but it also requires that you need to take some kind of action. Without taking any action, without physical activity, like when you order food, the food comes. You do it on application, but the food comes physically to you. Somebody is there. Some mechanism is there to bring that food to you. When you order a taxi, the taxi comes. So with anything that is you are doing digitally, there is associated some physical action, right? For cities. Now, if we say we are a smart city and we are offering early warning system, the hooter goes on, true, and you have got everything. But what? That warning has to take a shape, and that shape is take that water out of flooding. And how is that going to happen? unless you have got physically draining mechanism or channeling that water out to the sea or to whatever, wherever a safest place. There isn't anything going to happen without with just this warning. With this warning, nothing happens. Now, IT, ICT, they are doing wonderful things. I mean, really, it is all appreciable. They're doing wonderful things. Like recently, Autodesk from AutoCAD, they have come up with some kind of, digital twin kind of model for, and they are advertising, they are saying it that, okay, avoid floods using this software. Very well. And they say it is a digital twin. I agree to it. But the thing is, out of these twin, one is available, that is ICT, and the other twin is actually physically in the ground. On the ground, you need to have that kind of channels, storm drain system to be active, working in place for this digital twin to take, to get benefited from it. You get me? What I mean to say, physical infrastructure is always there. Even if you do not, if you have a sound physical, mature physical infrastructure, you don't need any kind of ICTs for that one. I mean, it will work for itself, and it has been working for thousands and hundreds of years. Right? Okay, such we have got this ICT available. It is going very fine. So what I mean to say is physical infrastructure is digital infrastructure in nowadays, in these times, is more important than anything. Anything like digital alone, digital transformation alone will not help to mitigate the climate risk. Of course, they help in a way that just to take actions in an appropriate time. So how can we make our cities smart? That is another question. Like, say, okay, the simple thing is like, if you, I mean, at the end of the presentation, probably you will find some of the pictures that will help you understand what I'm saying. Now, make all weather roads, because there is a United Nations report, and that, okay, 70% of the roads in the cities that are around the world are not good. They are not all weather roads. One rain and the road is gone. That kind of roads are there, so we need to build all weather roads, right? That's another one. Next is all utilities underground. As I tell you that, okay, I'll just give a simple analogy for this. Like, okay, take an example. Like, I mean, you have done the dishwashing, right? Dishwashing. What is the most important part in the dishwashing that you do is you clean the dishes from inside. I mean, even if you forget to clean it out from the outside, it doesn't matter because you're going to cook it from inside, right? So inside, the underground utilities and facilities that you provide for a city are more important. They are the lifeline of any city. So buried infrastructure is important. To make public transport integrated, efficient, available, and the cheapest. Meaning cheapest. For people, if they are using your car, the public transport should still be cheaper than that. That's one. And make infrastructure phygital. I mean, physical and digital as well. Now,
So much.
yeah, just okay. If I'm running out of time, yeah, yeah.
The final notes?
I mean, I've got the final notes for it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just wanted to say that, okay, there are three critical considerations for retrofitting or making a climate resilient cities. So the one is you need to do some kind of capacity building on multidisciplinary engineering, because cities are a multidisciplinary engineering, they require it. Without that, it will be difficult to build them. That's one. And establish city engineering coordination council in each city, because we just cannot say that this city is safe, the other city is at risk. All the cities on the planet, wherever they are, they're all at risk. So each city should have a city coordination council of smart city engineers. There should be a task force of engineers, this task force of engineers having multidisciplinary engineering knowledge. That is the first thing that we need to have on the human side. The next side is educating city administration officials, meaning we need to educate them. Most of the city cities have got different departments. Electrical department is different, water department is different, sewage department is different, and traffic department is different. They need all to come together. So for that, we need to educate the administration of it, and administration of the city. That's one. And utilizing funds prudently, because as I just mentioned, that there are different departments, they may be having different kind of requirements, and they may be having different kind of works on the same right of way, on the same road. They may be coming, digging, putting their services, and then, or at least maintaining the services. The next service, utility provider would come and do the same thing again. Instead, we can have a combined joint utility corridor, which has got access at very many places, and we can, build the city, and we can keep that city resilient to any kind of, or at least most kind of climate risk and extreme weather.
Thank you so much.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Mohammed. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But I have two things I need a clarification from you, please. That the reports you quoted from the United Nations that 70% of the roads
Right.
are not in order
In the cities.
in the cities.
Right.
So this 70%, the United Nations, are they specific? Is it global or in Africa?
It is global.
If it's global, I think we need to make that research properly.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
if just can
70%.
go, if we
Sorry?
just can.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Oh,
2 minutes, okay.
2 minutes. Okay. Okay.
Can we
Then,
just-
lastly,
No, no, just can
can the
you
city,
go to
can
the
city,
slide, next slide? We have got. You can find, okay, this is not this
Okay.
one, next.
oh, okay, okay. Can city be smart without
Yeah.
the ICT?
Can city
Be smart without the ICT? Because
See,
the
resilient,
presentation
it
is
can
giving
be.
more priority to the
No.
physical infrastructure.
Correct. It
And-
can be resilient.
And before, okay.
It can be
Okay, we are time
resilient.
up.
Yeah, it can be resilient. If it is not smart. Can you just go to the UN slide?
Okay.
Yes, here it is. You can find on this.
Okay, we can do what?
Find that.
Get that to them.
All right. Okay, very well. So simple answer is cities can be resilient, and with the help of ICT, it can be a smart, take decisions for themselves. So they are smart. Cities are
Because
smart.
We have been having physical infrastructure for decades before the days
Yes,
of
yes.
talking about smart cities.
Right.
So, and to my own knowledge, I may be wrong, but
Right.
I felt that innovation, technology, ICT are the components that makes this infrastructure to be smart.
Smart. So cities can be resilient,
Yes.
right? Cities will become smart with the inclusion of
The
ICT.
yes, makes it to be resilient.
That will make it doesn't make resilient. That doesn't make resilient.
Okay.
That makes it
Okay.
they are resilient. When
Okay.
cities are resilient, they
let-
can make it smart.
Let's listen for our audience.
Right.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Very well.
Thank you for your presentation.
Right,
Thank you
right.
so much. Thank you
Yeah,
so
please
much.
go ahead.
Do you have any inputs, any contribution or question from the audience? Yeah, please.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Maybe you can repeat the question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can repeat the question because, and I'm sorry, we started with 5 to 10 minutes late because the scene was not ready. So maybe 5 minutes so that we can, yeah, I know, but we were also very hurried up and things were not settled, So we started 5 to 10 minutes late.
All right.
Let's take the question first.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, as smart city rely on data collection and surveillance, how can privacy and data protection concerns be balanced with the needs of resilience and adaptation?
To whom? The question should go to Mr. Okay,
Yeah.
to you.
Okay, data privacy. Right. Actually, that is one of the components of smart cities that, okay, they need to get information, people information, or, public information or individual information as well. So there are laws, and there are guidelines that what data has to be collected and what can be disseminated to other organizations if required. So those laws are, in place. They protect the individual and privacy laws. So the privacy laws goes in to the point that you are not being pictured, you are not being put it under surveillance unless that it is required, and the protection doesn't it doesn't protect you while you're on on a public place. So information from the public place that can be traced to anyone, but in the private places or home or confined areas, it is certainly is being protected. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. Viola, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the contributions. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Panelists, thank you so much. Mohammed, Gabriela, thank you so much. Thank you so much, our listeners. Thank you so much for your time. We are grateful. Thank you. Technical guys, thank you so much. Yeah.
Bye-bye, everyone.
We had a group picture.
Yeah, sure. I will. We can ask them.